Seals and Croft here on the Q, 96.5 FM. And as always, this time of the week, we do our medical hour. And today, man, we have the medical man himself, the CEO of the hospital here, Phil Ennin, with us today. Phil, as always, welcome back in.
Good morning, and thank you.
Man, it's always good to have you come in because we like to pick your brains. You're the one guy that we can always sit down and talk to about some of the issues that maybe nobody else has the ability to or the desire to. And that's why I like seeing you walk through the door all the time.
Well, let's see what happens, right? Yeah. See, when I go home later on today, how many times somebody says, "I can't believe you said that." So we'll see how this works.
That sounds good.
Yeah.
You know, though, I being an old guy like myself, okay, and you're still a young fella by comparison here, I kind of enjoy having somebody that doesn't hedge you, you know?
Right.
That doesn't sit there and say, well, you know, here's the standard pablum that I'm going to give you and everybody else. And every time I've talked to you, you always will at least express an opinion, which is always a plus. I like that.
Yeah, I think, especially with the topic we're talking about, we got to move past the pablum, or we're just going to continue to be really, really unhappy with each other for a long time to come.
Yeah, we really are. All right, the new bill we've now in at least the House decided that we're taking away Obamacare and we're moving on to now what they all call Trump care here nowadays. I don't know why we have to put presidential names on top of these things, but at the same time, that's what we do. Your initial thoughts of what they passed in the House the other week?
Well, the real initial thought I have is I guess this is kind of just what had to happen because of the immaturity we have in the political process. It's almost like I can remember being a kid and growing up and being with my friends, and so maybe one of my friends would take off on my bike and I'd be yelling and screaming at him, you know, you took off with my bike. So the only form of revenge was to eventually take off with his bike at some point to get back at them, you know, sort of even, you know, you took my bike, so I took your bike, now everything's even and we can move on. And I feel, you know, so you have an effort by the Democrats in the late 2000s to pass the ACA with very, very narrow majorities and I think no Republican votes, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah.
Okay. So for those folks in the audience who believe in karma, I guess the karma of the whole thing is the Republicans had to pass a bill with very, very small majorities and no Democratic support. So now we're even, you know. And so in my mind, I don't know what we accomplished other than that. That this sort of leveling of the constant battlefield between the two parties. You know, you did this, so now we're going to do that. And maybe the good part of it is maybe now that they both had their moment in the sun, that they passed something. Although the Democrats got theirs all the way through to the president, I don't know if the Republicans will do the same thing. You know, maybe then we can finally, you know, after everybody puts down their lays their bikes down and just sits around the tree and talks, you know, we can get somewhere. The one of the things that's happening today that may have already happened, I'm just not aware of it, is there was finally going to be the release of the Congressional Budget Office financial rendering of what the Republicans passed. Right. And the predictions were that it would be basically be in a different sort of way, almost equally as expensive as on the country as what the Democrats had done with the Affordable Care Act. So again, I don't think that the CBO or the Congressional Budget Office report is going to be something that the Republicans are going to smile about and hold up and see, we told you everything's going to be great. I think it's going to be, wow. I mean, the bill really changes things dramatically. For my hospital, you know, every U.S. hospital that is in a state where Medicaid was expanded, the change is really dramatic because the funding for Medicaid falls precipitously to an unsustainable level based upon what we're doing now.
Sure.
And so it's difficult for me to feel a lot of confidence in that what the Republicans have crafted will actually become law.
Sure.
But I wasn't all that confident that they would get a bill out of the House of Representatives, and they pulled that off. Yeah. So we'll see. Yep.
That was interesting. All right, so let's talk about that.
Yeah.
In the Affordable Care Act, okay,
Right.
Medicare basically paid what portion of a
Well,
bill for a client of yours?
So let's stick to Medicaid
Okay.
because that's really where the ACA had the biggest impact, not
Okay.
Medicare.
Yeah, 'cause I
The
think we have a lot of confusion
Medicare,
and I misspoke.
yeah, Medicare. If you want to keep it simple, Medicare is what we all want to get to, right? We want to get to Medicare coverage. We actually like Medicare as much as we kind of complain about the government. We like Medicare. We like how it works, and if anybody ever tries to fiddle with it, we get pretty upset.
Yeah, we do. Are
So-
you happy from an administrator's point of view with Medicare? And that obviously is somebody at 65 years of age.
Right.
It's retirement, then it goes on to Medicare. As a hospital, does that work well for you guys?
Well, you use the phrase happy. I can't say happy.
Okay.
Do I understand the program better than I understand almost any other way that I get paid? Yes.
Okay.
Are the rules to the program easier to sort of figure out? Yes, because it's a very, very public process. But at the same time, some of the rules are incredibly unfair, and especially incredibly unfair to rural hospitals. And
How's
it's
that? What are they?
well, they make assumptions about care and services that because you have to, right? It's a giant country, so they make these assumptions. And when they make these assumptions, they typically make them in a room of people that they call experts, and they are experts at urban healthcare.
Sure. Okay.
But somebody like me, we didn't even know the meeting took place, let alone we didn't get invited to the meeting. So, what they come out with, and then I have to go to my legislative people and say, I'm sure that made a lot of sense for all the urban people that were in the room that live within 100 miles of the Atlantic Ocean or 100 miles of the Pacific Ocean. But for all of us in between, this ain't going to work. In some cases, they just made decisions that somehow providing care didn't cost as much in a rural setting. Well, it's a rural setting, couldn't cost as much. But I have to buy the same exact equipment and supplies.
Sure.
My staff has to get the same exact license. In the state of Ohio, there's not two medical licenses. There isn't a medical license for a doctor who works in Cleveland and a medical license for a doctor who works at Bryan. It's the same medical license. They had to go to the same schools. They had to get the same training. They had to pass the same tests. And the funny thing is, actually, on the supply side, I can't even buy it less expensively than the big boys can because of purchasing power.
Sure.
But Medicare makes this decision that somehow in the rural community, well, it's got to be less expensive. They pay less wages and things like that. Do we pay Toledo and Fort Wayne wages? No, but we're not way far off from Toledo and Fort Wayne wages.
Well, you wouldn't be able to get that same expertise here in Bryan.
Right.
In fact, from what I've seen, in often cases, you almost have to offer more to get somebody to leave a Columbus or a Cleveland, a metro area, to come to rural.
Well, we seldom are we capable of just recruiting someone out of a major urban center to come work for us, just for that reason. There's got to be some other reason. My husband or my wife got a job in the area, so now I don't really want to leave Ohio State University Medical Center. I gotta leave Ohio State University Medical Center, so I gotta find a job with you guys. But we seldom just flat out recruit a healthcare professional who's working in Columbus just to move to Bryan because they want the job. There's something else going on. They want to get closer back to home. They're tired of Columbus. Some people actually do get tired of Columbus, amazingly not enough. Or cost of living. They're a little bit further along in their career. They've had their fun with the big city stuff, and now they want a little bit less cost of living, which this community's cost of living is comparatively low compared to Columbus, compared to Toledo, compared to Cleveland, Cincinnati, things like that. Yeah. So we don't often. So where we're successful in bringing people in, it's because not only did they see this as an opportunity, but there was something else going on that met a need. We've got a physician coming in next year that the primary reason that we meet their need is they're a married couple, and his family lives in the Detroit metropolitan area, and her family lives in the Cincinnati metropolitan area, and Bryan's halfway between.
Okay.
So both
Sure.
families are happy.
Okay.
But when it goes back to the concept of payment, the thing that is very, very difficult for everybody to understand, because you don't really, I don't understand the radio communications industry because I don't do it all the time like you do.
Yes.
So how could you possibly understand the healthcare system when you don't do it all the time like I do?
No doubt.
But I can, for people who I can take some time and really educate them, what I can show them is that the payments that we get from Medicare are not enough. They don't cover our costs. And a lot of commercial payers, private payers, they actually cross-subsidize the Medicare program.
Okay.
And it's worked for, it's worked, especially it's worked when the economy has been strong and there's been full employment and people that have full-time jobs with benefits and health care coverage. It's not working anymore because not as nearly as many people have full-time jobs and not nearly as many people have health care coverage through their employer. So it's not working like it used to. But because so then you get to this phrase, like you've seen people advocate Medicare for all. That's the fix.
Right.
We should just all go on to Medicare because it's a really nice program. And I would say administratively, I understand why. I would say from the standpoint of the satisfaction that the people on Medicare tell everybody that they're really satisfied with the way it works, I completely understand why. But the problem for somebody like me is if it goes to Medicare payment levels for all, I'm probably 20% under.
Wow. Yeah.
In terms of it, like if I got paid Medicare for everything that I do,
Right.
I'm short 20 cents on a dollar.
You would have to find ways to cut back at that point in time or close the doors.
Well, you'd have to, it would impact programming, right?
Yeah, sure.
But imagine that that CHWC, which we've worked hard on cost. Could we work harder on cost? Yes, of course we could. But we've worked hard on cost. Imagine if we're 20 cents under. Imagine what an inner city safety net hospital is under.
Sure.
They're not 20 cents under. They're 30 cents under. They're 40 cents under.
So how do they keep the doors? How do they manage?
Well, it's a balancing act.
Services,
And the other part of it is that Medicare has different ways, different buckets of the ways they pay you. We don't get paid just by providing a service and submitting a bill and getting a payment. There's also programs out there. One of the things that I'll be advocating heavily for through the summer and into the fall is there's 2 different funding programs out there that are scheduled to come to an end at the end of this federal fiscal year. And it's going to be a huge hit on us if they truly come to an end. So, so they decided a long time ago, well, maybe those rural hospitals have a point. We're not giving them enough in the payments. So they came up with things that Medicare dependent hospital. There's if you can prove that you're a certain amount of your business is Medicare, which makes you really dependent upon Medicare, they actually give you some additional funding. And another program called low volume adjustment hospital. So you're kind of needed and necessary, but some of your volumes are pretty low, so they make an adjustment for that. Instead of just fixing the rate, they did these other things. Yeah. Well, those 2 programs come to an end at the end of September, and if they're not continued, we're hurting. Okay. That's all there is to it.
So those 2 programs make you whole at that point in time? Did they cover that 20 cents that we?
They don't necessarily cover the 20 cents, but in terms of the entire company, they put us in a situation where we finish the end of a fiscal year with more money in the bank than what we spent.
Right.
And if we don't have them, we're going to have to try to figure out some way to remove a lot of cost because we don't want to run a negative margin business.
Sure,
nobody wants to.
No, nobody. You're a nonprofit facility,
right?
Obviously, okay?
Right.
But it's still running a business is running a business, and you're a proud business person.
Right.
You want the bottom line, if nothing else, just for your pride and your satisfaction for going home at night. You want to try to run a business that is successful.
Well, we have a very simple philosophy. Our board is very pragmatic.
Sure.
So the philosophy is we should make a margin. That's appropriate. I don't think that we should make some vast margin.
Right.
I think it's that there's a point at which not-for-profit companies, if they've got that the margin's too big, and that's wrong. But not making a margin is not running a good business.
Right.
And so the combination of having some kind of a margin and positive cash flow, so that you're not kind of wondering if payroll is going to clear next week, kind of thing.
Exactly.
I don't think there's anything wrong with that and still being a not-for-profit company. My mentor and a longtime amazing person in this community, Rusty Bernicardi, used to say, show me a not-for-profit that's not making a profit, I'll show you a not-for-profit that's headed towards closure.
Sure.
And it's you get into this, and I use the phrase not-for-profit, and then there's the phrase non-profit.
Okay.
There's a little bit of a difference. A not-for-profit is that we're operating, but we're just not operating for a profit, that we're passing out a dividend and we're passing out, in a shareholder distribution, but we intend to cover our bills. Nonprofits are much more geared towards, if we get to the end of the year and we spend $100 and we took $100 in, that's good.
Right.
But even a nonprofit can't get to the end of the year spending $102 and only taking $100 in. It's not going to last.
Yeah, no doubt. Because there are things that pop up. If anybody that has been around the management side of a business, things pop up. Water lines go down.
Yeah, the unexpected.
You always have something. You've got to have money set aside so that you can take care of it.
Yeah, and the investments are extensive. Every business has, the big investments they've got to make. Last month, our board of directors approved $1 million expense to replace our entire cardiac monitoring system in the hospital. It needs to be replaced in the emergency departments and the intensive care unit. And it's going to be, and of course nowadays you don't just buy the monitoring system; you have to buy everything to tie the monitoring system into your computerized medical record. Right. Why would you want to make the nurse write down what the monitors are saying and go over to a keyboard and put it in? So by the time we got done working all the hardware out and all the software out, $978,000. I mean, that's a huge investment.
Yes. But
every business has their version of that. There's other businesses I know that a $5,000 investment would be the equivalent of our $978,000 investment.
Yes.
But we're fortunate we had the funds. We didn't have to run out to a bank and somehow float a short-term cash loan or anything like that. We're fortunate that we have those things, but there's no way that we're not a hospital that's able to somehow go to the government and say, well, we spent $978,000, and then the government goes, okay, we'll send you a check for $978,000. Right. They don't do that.
Right. Okay.
So
interesting.
Yeah.
The reason for being a not-for-profit facility,
right,
rather than a for-profit facility in a town the size of Bryan, Ohio.
Well, the reason is it just happened that way. Okay. So the history is kind of interesting. 1936, the Bryan Hospital opens. It actually opens. A physician built it and opened it, Don Cameron.
Okay. All right.
So quite honestly, it was a for-profit hospital for a long time.
All right.
And then in the late 1960s, the decision was made by the physicians in the community at that time to separate the hospital from the physician medical practice. So they surrendered the hospital to the Court of Common Pleas.
Okay.
The Court of Common Pleas then created this entity, this 501c3 entity, and appointed the original board. And that's how the Bryan Hospital became a not-for-profit hospital.
Wow.
Montpelier actually wasn't necessarily a not-for-profit hospital either. It was a joint township governmental district hospital that the upper 8 townships actually passed a levy on themselves in the late 40s to build a hospital in Montpelier.
Okay, all right.
And then retired the levy, I think, in the late 1960s. So not-for-profits, the reason that they get into that status is there's just some taxes they don't pay. And there's some pretty big taxes they don't pay. You don't pay property taxes, don't pay sales tax, things like that. Because you're using the monies otherwise and to benefit the community. And I would argue that we do that. We do use the monies, the otherwise monies, to benefit the community. If at some point the community decides, we're not holding up our end of the deal, or the not-for-profit status doesn't make any sense anymore, then we should be changed. Sure. And pay those taxes. It's just that what people would need to understand is the minute we have to pay those taxes, we're going to have to get the revenue associated with that to pay those taxes. It's going to come from somewhere. Well, sure. It may not necessarily be prices going up. It may be reductions in services or expansions of services to try to, we don't always want to think negatively. Right. But it's kind of a 601 half dozen of the other thing. Okay. But if the community thinks that we're not coming through for them otherwise, then that's a reason to question whether or not we should be not-for-profit.
And would you change something like that? Is that a referendum from the
No, it's a corporate conversion.
Okay.
No, there's no referendum where our particular hospital is concerned. So we're a private company that happens to be not for profit, just like every other private company in Williams County. Because I don't know if you've ever gone to the website to see how many 501c3s exist.
Sure.
We're just one of those. We probably just happen to be the biggest by far, one of those. So, no, it would be a conversion by us. And in the southern United States, for-profit hospitals are very, very common.
Okay.
It's just not in the northern United States.
All right.
So, southern western United States, yeah, they're a lot of them for-profit.
Why the difference in the geography here in the United States between the two?
I think basically in the southern United States, quite honestly, in some of those communities, the only way the hospital ever got built was somebody was willing to take the risk.
Okay.
And in the northern United States, the communities had the population density and the wherewithal to set it up on their own.
And you would feel like, at least I would feel, that if it's community owned, we have a little more say-so.
Yeah.
We've got the ability to reach out to a Phil Ennin and his board and
right.
say, hey, you're part of us, guys.
Right.
Let's think about this.
But it is kind of interesting. I mean, I wonder how many people in the audience would know that Lutheran Hospital in Fort Wayne, Indiana is a for-profit hospital.
Yeah. It doesn't make sense, does it? Huh? You wouldn't think that.
You wouldn't think that.
Not
you know,
just
but Lutheran Hospital does a pretty good job every year. They run these really giant full-page ads in the Fort Wayne papers showing how much property tax they pay.
Yeah.
Wow. But I wonder how many people would just assume that, you know, Lutheran's just like any other hospital, and they're not. But people are very happy with their services. They're very happy with the care that they get. They do a nice job. It's just a different way of doing it.
It is. I'll tell you what, we're in the middle here of the medical hour here on Q96.5 FM, brought to you by the Medical Specialty Clinics at Bryan Hospital and the community health professionals. And we have to generate some profit here at this point in time. So I need to step away right now. I have Phil Ennin as a guest here all the way up until 11 o'clock this morning. Go.
I'm gonna go get a drink of water.
Yeah. You want? I got some cold bottled water. You want something like that? That'd be good. Sit down. I got a glass. I'll go get you.
All right.
That works out well. Piece of drinking fountain.
Always be here for you if you have any questions. At Bryan Ford Lincoln, exceptional customer service is standard. We make the entire process easy. The Bryan Ford difference. We don't want to just sell you a vehicle today. We want you to be a customer for life.
There you go.
Ooh, thanks.
You bet.
I'll get me all the way to Perrysburg.
There you go, man. You're there. You got her. I opened her up for you, but help yourself. I'll take care of you. Get you where you need to go. How's that?
You want some of this?
Nope, that's yours.
Okay.
Go for it.
Convenient access to specialists.
That is yours.
Close to home. Our clinics include pain management, urology, ENT,
So the,
and allergy, cardiology, orthopedics, wound care, radiation oncology.
had some fun this past weekend.
Specialty clinics at Bryan Hospital.
Kevin Schaefer and a bunch of his buddies kind of reformed a band.
Oh, really? Okay.
Do classic rock. I mean, if it's anywhere near 1979, you know, they won't play it.
Okay.
And they've been going at it now for a little over a year. But they kind of need a little bit of help with the vocals, so I jumped in and sang backup vocals and a little bit of lead at the Bryan Eagles Saturday night.
Did you really?
Yeah, we had fun. We had a good time.
What's the name of the band?
Click.
Really? Okay, so you're part of that band?
Yeah.
I like to bring in on Fridays.
Yeah.
Okay. I was bringing local bands in on Fridays from 11 o'clock until 12.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And then one of the sales reps opened up a deal with Father John's. And I was going in and taping Father John's and playing it back on Fridays. Okay.
Yeah.
And then through his decision here, they decided to pull out of that and not do that anymore. And so I'm looking to go back to what I did before. And I just had a lady at the Eagles, you'll love this, or at the Lob Auto Parts, that Deb in there, who's their delivery driver, she goes, hey, you know, I've got a band that you need to get in there on Friday sometime. Okay, and I said, yeah, who's that? She goes, they're called Click. Okay, and I went,
we really had a really good show Saturday night.
That's what she said. She said that, you know, that she gave you the compliment that you were the best band that she'd heard in Northwest Ohio at the Eagles for quite a while.
Yeah, that's what we keep hearing. In fact, somebody was in there from the Defiance Moose.
Okay.
Now they want us to go to the Moose, and then the Defiance Amvets, and we're playing the Montpelier Moose later in June. But it's funny because I mean, the band instrumentally is really incredibly strong.
So, okay, who all the musicians?
Well, I don't know the guys. I don't even know their last names. But,
Okay.
Kevin Schaefer, keyboards, which is
Okay.
one of the reasons why it works so well.
Okay.
And then there's a guy, Terry, who grew up around here but lives in Nashville and drives up. They got 2 lead guitarists,
Oh, wow.
Terry and then Randy Bereni.
Okay, all right.
And then Tim Lucas plays.
This is Jim.
It's a bag that was used by Neil Armstrong on the Apollo 11 mission. A woman bought that bag for $995
Sure.
at a government auction in 2015. After she sent it to NASA to make sure it was real.
I'd be happy to.
It is.
What?
NASA
Yeah.
refused to give it back. The woman sued, and a federal judge gave her ownership. After all of that, the bag will go to a new owner on July 20th, the 48th anniversary of that historic mission, and it is expected to sell for millions. I'm Tracy Townsend.
250 million tonight in Powerball. I'm Mike Hawkins on the Ohio News Network.
Beauty Rest Black is more than a mattress.
Okay.
It's a haven for deep restorative sleep. Sleep that inspires your senses. A Beauty Rest Black experience goes beyond mere comfort. With Beauty Rest Black, a restful escape is possible each and every night.
Yeah, okay.
Sleep truly is the
I'd be happy to ask him that question. How's that?
what happens when
Huh,
luxury meets
okay.
when advanced
Well, thanks.
oils and
Thanks.
diamond
All right.
come together in Beauty Rest
Karen Ford. Okay. She wants to know how they can get the insurance that the public utility has right now. There are certain services that they will not cover at your hospital right now, so they have to go someplace else, and how they can change that. How's that? So sit down, man. We're about ready to go at this thing again, real quick. How's that?
Okay.
Okay. I don't really have an answer for that or not. but
No,
we'll-
I can't give a straight up, but I can help.
And Phil Lennon with us here again as we're in the about halfway through the medical hour here on a Wednesday. Phil asked me when we first started this thing, he says, how are we going to fill an hour, Jim, with this?
That's true.
You remember
Yeah,
that, Phil?
we don't seem to struggle with
We
that.
don't ever have a problem with that. I never have a. Last week I had a wonderful guest from San Diego. Okay, and I had the same difficulty there. I needed an hour and a half, and I got a good solid hour in with her. But again, the medical hour always brought to you by the medical specialty clinics at the Bryan Hospital, the community health professionals. We had a caller, and it's always you're always welcome to call and ask questions. But I had a caller who is part of the public employees here in Bryan. And their question to you was that the health insurance that they currently have right now at times will not pay for some of the services here at the local hospital, so they have to go to Fort Wayne or Toledo or wherever they might have to go at that point in time to cover those. And how could they help that so that they didn't have to travel and stay here locally?
Well, first of all, the question is not unusual. I go through this on a regular basis each and every year. So I'm going to give sort of a generalized answer because I don't know all the specifics. But what I would encourage anyone to do is just give me a call and give me the real specific information. It's easier for me to work on really, really specific stuff than just a general. When somebody comes up to me and says, "Well, my insurance won't work at your hospital," that's kind of hard for me to figure out. But if they say to me, "I work here, and this is my insurance," and then I've got real specific things to work on. So, yeah, it's completely true that not only in the case that we're talking about with the call, but it's completely true that we have people living in this community that they have coverage that doesn't work with us.
Right.
And so why? Why is that the case? Number one, in some cases, quite honestly, we've taken a look at that particular insurance company and we've looked at what they've offered to pay us for what we do, and it just doesn't work for us. And so sometimes the decision is actually ours.
Okay.
We can't contract with you because it doesn't make any sense what you want to pay us for what we do. Number two is sometimes we're not even asked.
Sure.
So the insurance never even, they'll say, well, your insurance won't cover me at the hospital, and I'll say, I've never even had those folks call me.
Okay.
So they made the insurance company made the decision, right? They made the decision that they had enough of a network available to people, and it was reasonable to, for example, well, you can go, what the insurance company says, well, you can go to Defiance. So that's close enough.
Sure.
So we don't need the Bryan Hospital. We don't need the Montpelier Hospital. So in some cases, what I find out is we didn't even know about it.
Okay.
Okay. In a third case, the what the company has purchased is based upon purchasing power. So the company buys something,
Okay.
and what they want is everybody wants the least amount of premium, right?
Sure.
That's
Oh,
what
sure.
everybody wants.
You
Well,
want the most coverage and have to spend the least for it. That
right.
obviously is
So
everybody's goal.
so anybody who's been a farmer,
Right.
right? They'll tell you how do they get their costs down? They join a co-op.
Right.
So I got a feeling that if you're a member of the Eden Farmers Co-op, you do everything through the Eden Farmers Co-op.
Right.
You don't go over to you don't go over to Archbold and get stuff at the co-op in Archbold.
Right.
Right? So and so in healthcare, what's happening, what we're starting to see, and we're going to see more of this, is employers and individuals are going to buy coverage because of the cost that is really going to narrowly limit where they can go to get care. So what you see happening in Fort Wayne, Indiana right now, what you see happening in Toledo, Ohio right now, is employers are buying plans that the only place you can go in Fort Wayne, Indiana is a Parkview Health System doctor or hospital.
Okay.
But if you walk into Lutheran, we're happy for you, but we're not paying for it.
Right.
I mean, it's that stark. It isn't because it used to be the old, you could go wherever you want and you paid 20% in the old days, right?
Right.
Now, if you stay within this narrow network Parkview plan, you actually may pay very little out of your own pocket. But the minute you go to Lutheran, you're paying 90% of the bill.
Sure. Sure.
And what Parkview's saying is that, if you can guarantee us these kind of volumes, we'll give you better prices.
Right.
So you're seeing that in Toledo now with ProMedica. You're seeing that with Mercy, that Medical Mutual and Anthem are selling products that you can only go to a ProMedica facility. So if an employer in this area, let's just say there's somebody living in this area, lives in Bryan but works in Defiance, and the Defiance employer buys a ProMedica plan, they probably can't come to the Bryan Hospital.
Sure. Okay.
So, but there are these specific cases which get pretty interesting, like the call that we got. It could be that there's actually some kind of mix up there, some kind of that we could actually fix it for that individual. That's why I like them to call me at the hospital and give me the real specifics.
Exactly. Okay.
But it's just what we're going to see more and more is it's almost going to be like, what would it be like if we actually had the opportunity to buy gas even cheaper than what we buy it for now, but we can only go to marathon stations.
Right.
I mean, some of us would take that deal.
Sure. Sure.
Some of us would say, well, yeah, I'll take
do
that deal.
this.
And other people would say, oh, man, there's not even a marathon station within 10 miles of me.
Exactly.
And then that's when things get weird. So in rural communities, this is where we get punished because the big cities and the big insurance companies think, well, if people have to drive to Wauseon to go get their health care from Bryan, that's okay. 40 miles, 30 miles, whatever it is.
Well, and in a big city, 40 miles is no big
Yeah.
deal.
So what they say is, well, we got you
Okay.
can go to the Wauseon Hospital. You don't need that Bryan Hospital.
Right.
Well, but if you live in Williams County, that's not, that's pretty inconvenient.
Yeah. No doubt about that.
So it's I think actually what the caller is hinting towards is something that I see coming in a heavy way. Very, very narrow networks. Some people who work for General Motors or Ford, they get amazing pricing on General Motors and Ford products, right? It's the same concept over and over again. It's just not something that we've necessarily felt comfortable with for healthcare. We've wanted to go wherever we want to go and see whoever we want to see. But I did have a board member, a wonderful board member who was with us, who was a farmer, and he always kind of wondered. He goes, if this was a co-op, there's no way you guys would ever pay for anything that would be outside of your network. Like for the CHWC employees, why would we ever pay for them to go anywhere else to get something done for something we can do? That's the way he looked at it.
Right.
And he's right.
Right.
It's just that people want choice.
Right.
And the problem is how much we're paying to have that choice. And it's getting to the point where, wow, that's a lot of money. The employer, it's a lot of money. I know the employees want more choices. I know they want to be able to go see this doctor and see this doctor. But man, how much money we can save just in the premium, can't ignore that anymore.
Well, and that has gotten to be a real difficult situation over the course of the last 10 or so, 20 years in our lifetime, because earlier on, in a previous life, I ran a company. Was a
Yeah.
sales manager for a company and saw the numbers all the time. And
Yeah.
we paid health care for everybody.
Yep.
And those health care numbers were nowhere near the percentage of our business
Right.
that they are for a business today, you know?
Well, I think that's where people. It'd be nice if we were better historians.
Sure.
So, you know, you were. That was what maybe 20 years ago.
20 years ago, in the 80s.
Well, you were 20 years younger.
No doubt about that.
You were 20 years healthier.
Yes.
You were 20 years more able to avoid consuming health care at all.
Correct.
The nation was. I have to believe the average age of the nation at that time was younger.
Of course.
Well, as you grow older, the one thing we know about growing older is you start consuming health care
Yes, you
on a
do.
much more regular basis. So the insurance companies are saying, well, yeah, I can't give you the premiums I gave you 20 years ago because you're going to the doctor in the hospital way more than you did 20 years ago.
Yeah.
So, but we don't remember that. All we remember is that, you know, well, when I was working at the company and everybody at the company was about 35 years old, we didn't pay anywhere near this kind of money for this coverage. Now, it's the same company, but we're paying way more. Well, yeah, you're all 55 years old now.
Right. Right.
So, you know, you're starting to have your knee replaced and your hip replaced, and you're starting to have the back problems and hip problems, and
Yeah. Man,
you know.
described
So it's the mistake that we make over and over again that we don't remember how we got here.
Right. Right.
So, and it sure feels like it's not sustainable, right?
Yeah. No,
We can't keep doing this.
Now, hopefully, and you always hear this, and the conversation always goes back to this, because you know the baby boomers were the big group and the big
Oh, yeah.
population.
Oh, yes.
Now we do have a nice sized population coming up here that are young folks
Right.
at this point in time. But the problem that we have run into, and the one thing that the Affordable Care Act
Right.
did, was it said, you're buying it or we're going to force you to spend some sort of money as a penalty at this
Right.
point in time, okay? Because without that bottom end, without that young end buying the insurance, we really have a problem. And I think that becomes an argument that I've heard, to one of the legitimate arguments from the folks who say, let's cover everybody, let's find out a
Right.
program right now where we can run it through, you know, and we'll get back to this Medicaid idea here in a minute with the new health plan that's there. But let's set up a new Medicaid plan and make sure that everybody's in there and everybody's paying their fair share. That seems to be maybe a potential solution if you can possibly pull that off. But how do you pull that off? Because now the younger generation says, well, why should I be paying, you know, $300 a month for health care at all? You know, I'm healthy. I don't need that. You know?
It's one of the 400 different dilemmas we have in this conversation. So, on the one hand, and I think I've shared this before, we're totally okay as a society that 16-year-old boys have to pay a lot more for automobile insurance coverage
Sure.
than 16-year-old girls.
Sure. Yes.
But society's totally cool with that.
Right.
But we're not okay with someone who has all sorts of medical conditions and issues paying more than someone who's completely healthy. We're not okay with that.
Right.
So, so we created a functional market that works, I think, for automobile insurance coverage.
Mm-hmm.
We haven't created a functional market that works for healthcare coverage.
healthcare at all.
So, if you believe in the social contract, if you're an individual who actually believes that healthcare is a right,
Right.
then you also have to be willing to say, so if you're 25 years old and somebody asks you, do you think healthcare is a right? Yes. Then you can't turn around and say, but I'm not paying in.
Exactly.
So you can't have it both ways.
Mm-hmm.
And so, there's going to be a period in your life where you're making more deposits than you're making withdrawals. But I thought that was also Social Security, and we kind of like that one too.
Exactly. Exactly.
Making a whole bunch of deposits over a really long time, hoping to get to the point where you can actually make the withdrawals.
Exactly.
We're okay with that. We're not there on healthcare.
Yeah. Why? Why is that? Why is that different in people's minds?
It's so new. The concept of, well, first of all, the concept of healthcare on a global scale is in terms of the history of the world, it is very, very new. I mean, we're only going back to the Kaiser, right? We're only we're not even in the 1800s before we're barely in the late 1800s when the first time some leader says there should be a healthcare system for everybody in Germany.
Yeah.
So what's that? It's less than 150 years.
Yeah, it is.
So, and then Medicare has been around for 50, 60 years, whatever it is. This is also really, really new. So we're not very far removed from the local doc. Basically, it was a transaction between you and the doc.
It was.
There wasn't any third party processing the claim.
Yeah.
It was the doc stopping by and
He stopped at the house.
something.
He brought the
or
medication that you wanted. Even he would give you a shot to give you the pills.
Or the front parlor of the home.
Heck yeah.
I mean, we're talking
When I was
40s,
a kid,
50s.
yeah.
We're not talking very far along. And the
Even 60s.
the pace of the change.
Yes.
So it was a very, very, very poorly managed transition from a straight self-pay transaction between a provider and a customer to this big, massive thing we've got going on where, when we make comments about single payer, there are millions of jobs in the insurance industry that people cringe. Okay, Jim, Phil, single payer sounds pretty good to you, but I just lost my job.
Exactly, right.
I lost my job at the local insurance agency. I lost my job at the transaction place for the insurance company. Easy for you guys to talk about this.
No doubt.
So we added layer upon layer on this thing, and now it's starting to weaken and crumble. And the transition doesn't look. I mean, the politicians aren't very good at the transition, but I got a feeling even if they sort of left it up to us, we probably wouldn't be all that rational and nice to each other about it either. We just have really strong opinions about it.
Yeah, no doubt about that. And it's a difficult problem right now. All right, let's go back to the new bill that just passed the House right now, because the one thing that you keep hearing all the time is that we're going to cut Medicaid back from the budget at this point in time, and we're going to put this cost onto the state. Who in the past we've been sending money back down to
Correct.
the state, and that's going to cover everything. Now, in your from your vantage point here, how's that about to work here for us?
Well, if you follow what the bill says, then the individual states are going to have the opportunity to go to the federal government and say, well, for the money that you send us, we'd like to spend it this way. And then the government would have some process to say that that's okay. Right. We'd like to spend it this way. So the states, in some states, not all, some states want, we want the money, but we want to decide how we're going to allocate the money, spend the money, do those different things. So if you're a big believer in states' rights, that sounds really good. But is it really going to work that Ohio's program works one way and Michigan program work another way and Indiana's program works another way? Or is that just going to add a different kind of confusion to the whole thing? And what are the minimums? What's the minimum that if you're on Medicaid that care and services should be? Is there going to be disagreement among the states about that?
Right.
And the other thing is states change their minds, right?
Sure.
Someday
change elected officials.
Yeah, so someday, based upon our history, you have to believe that someday is going to come in the state of Ohio in the future where the Democratic Party will have significantly more influence and potential total control like the Republicans have now. Right. I mean, if you just look at history, that's happened.
Yes.
So the Republicans, while they're in charge, they set up the Medicaid program to work a certain way, and that's the way the state of Ohio wants it done. Well, until somebody else is in charge and wants to change it, and then you have this massive shift. We got to stop doing it this way, and we got to start doing it that way. So, I have mixed emotions about a state like Ohio having more control. I certainly have significantly more influence in Columbus. I can go to Columbus. I can see people. I know where to find them. I can get appointments. I can't do that in Washington, D.C., not without somebody at the security thing saying, well, I don't think you're supposed to be here, buddy. So it's hard for me to go to D.C. and have the same – it's impossible for me to go to D.C. and have the same level of influence in the conversation. But I don't know that going down to Columbus fundamentally makes sense. Why is the delivery of and payment of health care – especially for a community like ours, why is it going to vary so dramatically between Bryan, Ohio, Angola, Indiana, and Hillsdale, Michigan? Right. Folks in Bryan, Hill, and Angola, I think we're kind of normal, regular folk.
We sure are.
So why? Why does that arbitrary state line decide, what I get in Hillsdale versus what I get in Bryan versus what I get in where healthcare is concerned.
Sure.
So that's the dilemma that I see in the Medicaid design. I'm fully ready to accept the fact that the amount of money that gets sent is, quite honestly, the amount of money that gets sent is the amount of money that gets sent, and we just got to make it work. Would we like to have more money? Of course we would.
Sure.
It doesn't look like we're going to get more money. It looks like we're going to get a whole lot less.
Right.
But at the end of the day, if the program itself is as rational it can be, and the funding is as clear as it can be, we'll just have to make it work.
You have the ability to work with it at least at that point in time.
Well, it's clarity, right? I mean, when I got interviewed when the bill passed, they said, "Well, what's the single biggest impact for you on the bill passing?" I said, "More confusion, to be honest with you, inability to plan, don't know where anything sits, waiting longer for someone to decide. It's hard to run a business that way.
Yeah, it really is.
You know, if I had a parts business." And the cost to acquire the parts was constantly shifting all over the place. It'd be hard for me to figure out how to price my parts.
Yeah, entirely. There's no doubt about that. Right now, today, as it stands, okay, with the Affordable Care Act still being in place, the funding that's coming back through Medicaid with that program right now, you know it, first of all, you know what's there.
Right.
And compare it now to the cost of the Medicare. We just talked about it not necessarily covering all the costs. Medicaid under the Affordable Care Act, is it covering the cost better than the Medicare side of this?
No, we get paid even less by Medicaid than we do than Medicare.
Okay.
So the difference is, and I've shared this in many forums before, the difference where Medicaid's concerned for me is the difference in probably getting not paid anything at all and getting some kind of a payment.
Okay.
But Medicaid doesn't even pay what Medicare pays, and we've already shared that Medicare I couldn't make it on a Medicare rate.
Right.
So in terms of the Ohio budget process, what's happening in the Ohio budget process right now? It's in the state Senate. The House has passed it, and they're having a real difficult time because the revenue intake by the state of Ohio is way off targets, predictions.
Okay.
The governor has already submitted a revised budget with $800 million less money in it than they thought they were going to have when he started the budget process in February. And if you look at it, it's just that the state is not taking in the amount of revenue it thought it was going to be taking in as the year progresses. And in the Senate, they're worried that it's actually worse than that. It's more than $800 million have to come out. So in my particular business, where the budget's concerned, the best that I can hope for right now is a freeze over the next 2 years.
Sure.
In other words, I've communicated to State Representative Rob McCauley, Rob, I'll take that deal.
Right.
If it means a freeze for hospital payments, I'll take that deal. You know, I get it. I understand it. But please, 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 Rob, don't cut me.
Right.
Well, Rob's getting that from everybody, right?
Sure,
and he's
sure.
definitely getting it from, in other words, well, you're giving me a cut, freeze my payments, cut him.
Right.
So that's what's going on at the state level right now, and that's going to happen irregardless of the federal funding from the ACA. I mean, the state of Ohio knows, at least for the next 2 years, how much money they can expect to get from the federal government in the Affordable Care Act,
Right.
and so because that's still the law of the land, so they can make those plans. And how do they manage that? But when Medicaid and healthcare overall just consumes and swallows more and more of Ohio's budget, if they have to make cuts, that's where the cuts are going to get made too. Because I think they've actually probably made the cuts everywhere else they could make them. If you talk to the city of Bryan, Williams County government, the villages, the townships, they kind of feel like they've had enough.
Yes. And
They don't want any more. So if you talk to a Williams County commissioner, he'd probably say to you, "I think it's time for the hospital to pony up here."
Right.
So it's a balancing act at the state level.
Yeah. Interesting. Well, you know what? It's an hour.
We've made it.
How's that?
Yeah.
And we have more that we could talk about, but
We sure do.
You need to make a run over for a meeting in Toledo right now.
Yep.
So with that, I appreciate your time, and we invite you back. Okay.
Yeah, and just to make sure that whoever did call in, call me.
Yeah.
Let's
please.
talk.
Just call the general number at the hospital and ask.
I jokingly say, but it's really not a joke. You call the hospital and ask for Phil.
Yeah.
They know who you're looking for, and they'll find me.
They will track you down.
Yep.
No doubt about that. Phil Innan has been our guest today on the Medical Hour, brought to you by the Medical Specialty Clinics at the Bryan Hospital and Community Health Professionals. And again, Phil, thank you very much for the time. Look forward to talking to you again here shortly, okay?
Yep, take care.
All right, Chief.
Thanks, man.
Oh, no, thank you. Thanks for coming. It all works out well.
That was
Obviously,
fun.
we have a few people listening to us
Yeah.
because they call and say,
Yeah, I like
hey,
to call
ask that worthless son of a gun.
Yeah, so
And
hopefully
she-
she'll call me.
Yeah, well, it's Karen Ford who's, on the VPA, is who it was.
Yeah,
And I would bet she will probably
I think
call
the
you.
problem there is
You-
what
that
she's talking
turns it
about.
the other way.
I think what she's
There you
talking
go.
about is that thing that was in the paper about the Parkview
Oh,
county
okay.
commissioners. So
Okay.
the problem is, what I'm going to tell Karen is we're not a reference lab,
Okay.
so that they won't be able to come to us either.
Okay.
Because we're not a reference lab.
Okay.
And then I'll kind of help her to understand and explain why.
Yeah.
But it wasn't so much the pricing, although the pricing did go up.
Okay. Okay.
It's that when the medical group shut down doing the laboratory in Bryan, that made them not a reference lab anymore.
Okay. Okay.
And that's what really changed.
Okay.
So everything goes to Fort Wayne. That's where the reference lab is.
Okay. The
And
reference lab being, what is
that's
that?
a phrase they use.
Okay, to say that, what does that mean to
So the insurance company means that we've got to
We've certified them,
price with
okay,
them,
we,
and
okay,
they're-
yeah.
and they're good. They can do that.
Yeah, they're a partner of ours, basically.
And
Okay.
they just don't have the same. The employees don't get the same type of price
Okay. Okay.
as if they go to a reference lab.
Okay.
But the insurance company won't make us a reference lab either. And I get it. I understand why. I can't compete with the giant lab companies on what they charge.
Yeah. Sure. Sure.
I can't sell complete blood count for what Quest or LabCorp.
Sure. But,
I just can't do it.
Yeah, you're doing this many and they're doing that many, right? Obviously,
well,
sure. Whatever that might be. Yeah.
So
Whatever that
but
number
if
is,
Karen
yeah.
calls me, then it gives me a chance to talk, which would be good.
Okay. Good.
All right.
Well, I bet she'll call you. There's no
I hope
doubt
so.
about that. Okay.
Okay.
Have a safe trip. Thanks, Bill.